Hey everyone, it's Nicole Spohr here today, and I am sharing a watercoloring with re-inkers card featuring the Simon Says Stamp STAMPtember Paper Rose Poinsettia Border Stamp Set. This is a 4x5 3/4 clear stamp set, exclusive limited edition set, and I absolutely love this poinsettia border. We're actually going to stamp it along the top and the bottom, and then we're going to watercolor it with the Stamp Market re-inkers. We're going to position that border so that we can stamp it along the top and then along the bottom, and I want to leave a little space in between to stamp a sentiment from the set. There's a couple of scripty sentiments. There's Season's Greetings and Merry and Bright. We're going to use Season's Greetings today, and then there are four other phrases that are perfect for a thin phrase strip, and we're going to be using one of those with the Season's Greetings sentiment. We'll be stamping that on a separate piece of cardstock and layering it with some foam adhesive onto the card. Other than that, everything else is one layer. I stamped those border images then with the Ink on 3 Fade Out No Line coloring, or no line coloring ink, pardon me, and then I'm just going to use my re-inker and just kind of squirt a little bit of that onto my glass mat to use as a palette. And I'm going to use a water brush pen. I am really being careful with the amount of water I'm allowing. I do not want a lot of goopy water. I want it to be just a lot of the re-inker ink. And so I'm going to kind of color in with Blush Pink and Cherry Kisses are the two colors for the poinsettia, and I'm using Leafy, this is a green color, to color in some of the leaves. And to start with, I kind of skipped around a little bit to figure out kind of what I liked the most, and just, trial and error. I had not done this particular technique before, and so I was playing around more than anything. And I wasn't really quite sure until I got pretty far into the first border if I was going to like it or not. So it was more of a test of, am I going to like how this turns out or not? I ended up absolutely loving it once the two borders were colored. But what really kind of took this over the edge for me from like to love was there's additional like leaf and little berry images in this stamp set, and I'm going to use those solid images with the Coordinating the Stamp Market ink pads. So we'll be using Leafy and Cactus and Cherry Kisses to stamp those solid images around our watercolored images, and I really love that layering. There is a coordinating die set, so there are a couple of options for purchase. There's the stamp set on its own, and then there's the stamp and die collection. So if you really want some dies to coordinate, you can always pick that up instead. We'll color in a little green. I did skip around. I did not particularly want to watercolor right next to what I was working on, because I didn't want the colors to bleed. So you'll see me start in the middle and then work on the two ends. And by adding different amounts of water, you can see you get some dark leaves and some light. It really wouldn't be completely necessary to even add another green color to this if you didn't want to. I do end up coming back with the Cactus re-inker ink and applying a little of that to some of the areas as well. I love the Blush Pink and the Cherry Kisses together. I think they really work nice. And I'm just going to keep coloring this in. I will tell you that I only colored on camera one border, and that's simply to save time. It is a little, any coloring, any painting tends to be a little time consuming if it's a detailed image like this. And so since they're colored exactly the same, I opted to just do one on camera to save you a little bit of time. We're just tracing those outlines. Something I considered, but I didn't do because I kind of just felt like it might take away from the beautiful coloring, but I think it would be a fun option depending on what kind of card you're creating, is you could always do this no line coloring, and then you could come back in and stamp the outline of this again and emboss with something like antique gold embossing powder. I think that would be really, really pretty. I knew I wanted to use those solid leaf images, and they're not going to stamp over an embossed image, and the embossing would cut them off. Does that make sense? I hope. And so I opted not to today. I opted to just keep it with that no line look. So if you're wondering kind of what my thought process was there, that is what I was thinking, just because I thought the outline would really maybe kind of ruin the overall look and appearance of this card design. So I'm starting with blush pink first, and then coloring in with Cherry Kisses, and then just kind of pulling Cherry Kisses into the blush pink. This has given me a two-tone type look for the poinsettia petals. Some are dark, some are light. It's all good. It's going to work out awesome. And again, I'm really just trying to work a little area at a time and trying not to watercolor next to something I've just done, as it could very, very likely bleed into the other color. I'm now adding a little citrine to the center of the poinsettia flowers. I'm taking just straight Cherry Kisses and adding red to the berries. And then we're going to take a little cactus and pull that little bit brighter green into some of the petals for just a fun little two-tone look here. Adding a little bit more water if it needs to be blended out. And then I did let this sit and completely dry. It was dry really quickly. It did not take very long, but you definitely want to make sure it's dry. If it's not, hit it with a heat tool before you stamp and do any embossing. So while this is drying, I did watercolor both sides, remember. I'm going to take some Leafy, the Stamp Market cardstock, and I am going to stamp the phrase, "Wishing you the merriest Christmas ever," on this Leafy cardstock using Simon Says Stamp clear embossing ink, and then we're going to heat emboss this phrase with Simon Says Stamp white detail embossing powder. Once we have this heat set and it's cooled, I am going to take some of my favorite basics dies from Simon Says Stamp. You've probably seen me use them a lot lately. They are these sentiment labels, and they're great borders in varying widths, and then they're all at least 5.5 inches wide. So they're going to fit a standard size card base, an A2 size card base, but you can trim them down. They've got some little notches if you want to notch the ends. I use the skinniest one to die cut this phrase, and it just is the perfect little strip. I don't have to worry about lining my stamp up perfect. I don't have to worry about trimming it with my paper trimmer perfect. Really makes me happy. So I'm just going to go back in now and add a little more color to a few areas that I felt like needed a little more cactus. Don't be afraid to rework your card if you think it needs it. And strangely enough, now we're going to do probably my favorite part of this card. I love the watercoloring. It turned out so much better than I could have imagined, but this step here is what really tips it over the edge for me, and that is the solid leaf images. We are going to use a Misty because I want to be able to ink them up more than once. And I did because I really wanted these crisp stamped images. So I'm going to use the two solid leaf or kind of sprig images, pine leaves or whatever you want to call them, from this Paper Rose Poinsettia Border stamp set. And we are going to stamp them with leafy and cactus inks. So these are the ink pads that are the same colors, obviously, as the re-inkers that we just used from the stamp market. Beautiful, beautiful colors. It's all going to coordinate, and you're going to see me just kind of go through this whole design, adding these stamped images. I'm cleaning my stamps really good, moving them around, and it's really just trial and error, kind of what looks good here, will it look good over here? Just playing around with these leaf images, filling in the ends. I didn't really fill in the center. Remember, I want to have that nice little space in the center for my Season's Greetings sentiment. The Merry and Bright sentiment would also work. You could also just use one of the little phrases in the center if you don't want to add two different sentiments like I do here. So different options for that. Also, keep in mind, these sentiments could be used with lots of holiday stamp sets. Really like the fonts used for these. They're really nice, fantastic holiday sentiments. So we're just going to keep building all of these little images here. I am going to speed it up to continue on to the next part of the card. As I'm adding in these final few little sprigs of greenery, you can really see how nice it's balancing out. Isn't that so fun? Really, really loving this, you guys. I hope you are too. I absolutely love STAMPtember. I love seeing what the different companies come up with. Oh, I wanted to mention as well, Paper Rose is a company kind of new to me. I don't think I have used their stamps before, and I think these are absolutely gorgeous. So this was a real treat to use a new company to me today. I'm going to take this little trio of red dots now, and we're going to just stamp these all over. And again, this is another little step. It's such a small thing, but look at the difference this makes in the overall design. Really excited about this. So just adding scattering of this all over my panel, filling it all in. Then once everything is completely dry, we want to make sure all the ink is dry. We don't want anything to be wet because that will cause the embossing powder to stick to it. I'm going to stamp Season's Greetings with a clear embossing ink right there in the center, and we are going to heat emboss with antique gold embossing powder. So that's going to give a little elegant touch to this holiday card design. And there were a few stray embossing flakes. In fact, I thought I was going to start heating it up, and I saw a couple of stray flakes, and so I'm just going to wipe those away with a dry paintbrush really quick. Now there is a little glob of green. I tried my best to disguise it. What happened was I dropped a little drop of water, and it smeared some of my paint. And instead of redoing the whole panel because I was completely done coloring it, I went ahead and left it. I like to point that out because who cares if it's not exactly perfect? No one really will ever know but the person who created it. And so while I did my best to disguise that, I think it really doesn't make that big of a difference. I am adhering my little sentiment label now with foam adhesive right underneath Season's Greetings. How pretty is that, you guys? So, so excited about this. And then I did decide to go in with some Nuvo crystal drops in bright gold and just add little tiny drops to the centers of all of my poinsettias. I know I colored those with the Citrine ink, but I just felt like I needed a little something with dimension on my card. And so this is a great way to add a little bit of texture but not overwhelm the design. It's still, the focus is still on these gorgeous poinsettia borders. I will take this panel then, adhere it to a side fold white card base, and my holiday card featuring watercoloring with re-inkers is all finished. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this card featuring the STAMPtember Paper Rose poinsettia border stamp set. The supplies I used to create this card are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more videos featuring Simon Says Stamp STAMPtember exclusive limited edition stamp sets. If you enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you could give it a thumbs up, and please subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell to never miss a new paper crafting and card making video. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.